So the first event today is something we've been doing for a few years. We as teachers are constantly giving you guys work to do, sometimes on the spot, little exercises, whatever. Not often do you get to see teachers be put on the spot, especially when it comes to writing, and especially when it comes to writing poetry, but that is exactly what we're gonna do today. So our two, as they say, victims, I mean volunteers, come on up. We have Mrs. Wiggins, and Miss Torrance, come on up. Round of applause. This is not easy what they're about to do. We're going to send them backstage, and they are each going to have to write a poem that they are then going to read on stage in, if I can do math, about a half an hour. So they have about 30 minutes to write a poem, one composed poem each, and they have to use all 15 of the words that are on the screen there, okay? By the way, you are allowed to change the form of the word. So if you don't like adverbs, you could change freely to free. That would be cool, okay? All right, you ready? How you feeling? Nerves? Mrs. Wiggins wanted to know, Miss Torrance, if we needed a little like bust a move thing to get some jitters out.
Like right now you're saying?
Well, I don't know. Okay, all right. That was good. Just get Wiggins to do it backstage before she starts writing. All right, we're gonna send them off to write. Thank you very much. We'll see what they can come up with later. Okay, so today, the cool thing is we have a lot of people who actually write regularly in the community that we don't necessarily know about, and we try and get these people on stage during Writers Expo for you to hear from as often as we can. And today you've got a nice opportunity. So your main presenter today burst onto the poetry scene with the publication of her first book entitled Poetry is More Than Just a Poem in 2002. Since then, she has written 2 more books, Journey of Discovery in 2004, and A Writer and a Fighter in 2012. She is currently working on another book of poetry, along with a memoir/self-help book. In terms of honors, she has received an International Poet of Merit Award from the International Society of Poets, and when Karen Yarbrough was one of our state representatives, she received 2 special recognition awards from her. She was also nominated to replace Gwendolyn Brooks as the Illinois State Poet Laureate in 2003. Please welcome Paula Denise Johnson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to share some of my poetry with you guys. I am actually, I don't know if Kazi wants me to embarrass him. I'm his mom. I told him I wouldn't embarrass him. But I'm excited to be here. I'm going to read a couple of my poems to you guys, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background where I come from. I started writing at a very young age. I wrote my very first poem when I was 11. And it was dedicated to the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King. Just imagine me as an 11-year-old militant little girl thinking that Dr. King was the hero and could save the world's problems reading this poem. I'm going to read it to you. And this was the poem that I actually won a award for at 11 years old. It's called Keep His Dream Alive. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream. Throughout all America, he wanted freedom to reign. In his dream, he saw love between blacks and whites. He saw everyone with equal rights. He saw people loving each other for who they were and not their color. In the year 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. died, but we must all strive to keep his dream alive. So that was my very first poem as a little girl, and it helped me build confidence in myself because I got standing ovations for it at 11 years old. You know, that's gonna boost your self-esteem. So I continued to write. But I quickly grew up and realized that the world has several different issues, such as racism, violence, children killing themselves, postpartum deaths like suicide, and parents killing their children. All of these very dark things I began to write about and dabble in it, but it was becoming very depressing. But I'll read another poem to you guys when I talk about the darkness. Stripped of a dream. He kissed his father and mother goodbye as he left for school. His backpack held last night's homework and today's lunch. He was very excited about school and getting an education. His teachers were always complimenting him on his grades and achievements. He earned nothing less than an A+ on his report card. When he is older, he wishes to become a doctor and save lives. His dream is to give the world a better tomorrow. As he reaches the schoolyard full of children, a smile brightens his face. Suddenly, a car pulls up, gang signs are flashed, and shots are indiscriminately fired. The children scatter the schoolyard, screaming and running in every direction. His backpack flies into the air as 2 bullets pierce his tiny body. His 10-year-old body hits the concrete and a puddle of blood forms around it. Who knows, he may have been the future doctor to find a cure for AIDS, but he was stripped of a dream. So that's some of the dark stuff that I wrote in the beginning of my writing. So this is my first book. So that contains a lot of the dark things with violence, and it's still going on today, but I tried to shy away from that and get out of that, so I started becoming more positive. When I attended high school, I got interested in more inspirational poetry. So my English teacher, Mr. Klish, was a wonderful English teacher. I had the pleasure of analyzing a poem entitled Invictus by William Ernest Henley. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but it's a very powerful and inspirational poem. It was written while he was in the hospital, about to lose his other leg after losing one already. So he was trying to motivate himself. So I did an analysis on this poem, and I received an A+. I have to say the plus because that means I exceeded, and I love to exceed. So I exceeded expectations. So I got that A+, and that encouraged me to look at different authors and different poets that I wouldn't normally read about. I was very into Nikki Giovanni, Maya Angelou, Helen Keller, Richard Wright, Langston Hughes, poets like that. So Ernest Henley was different for me, and it was more inspirational. So that began my journey of writing more about inspirational things, and I got out of the darkness. Okay. And understanding the background of the poet and the poems, that also helped, knowing what he was going through, and that this inspired him and motivated him to realize that you can actually be the master of your fate. And that's like one of my favorite quotes, master of my fate. Okay. So this changed my world, and I was encouraged, like I said, to try to excel in other classes that I wasn't excelling in. I was excelling in English. Like I said, I got an A+, but I wasn't doing so good in math. So this built my confidence to let me know that I could do something. I was good at something, and not walk around with my head down because I wasn't doing great in other classes. And this teacher, he had no idea that what an impact his positive words and that A+ would have on my future goals in writing and my life in general. He didn't know what I was going through as a teen in school. You know, you go through a lot of things. Sometimes you think you're ugly, you're fat, your kids are being bullied, and there's things that lessen your self-esteem or decrease your confidence. So that A really helped increase my confidence. And I also have a poem that I wrote. Sometimes I perform my poems and I don't read them. There's a poem that's one of my favorite. It's Who's Laughing Now? And it talks about kids that are being bullied for the way they look, the way you were born, or who you are. Basically your physical appearance. So I am going to read this poem to you guys, because this is one of my favorites. And it's entitled Who's Laughing Now? This is one that I love to perform. My kids love to hear me read this all the time. So sometimes when we're sitting and they're bored or whatever, I'll perform it for them, and they love it. Kazi loves this poem. It's called Who's Laughing Now? When I was a child, you laughed at me. I would hide my face, but my tears you could surely see. You claimed I was abnormal because I didn't look like you. You believed I had no feelings, but deep down inside only I knew. You laughed at my clothes and the braids my mother put in my coarse hair. You spit on me and called me derogatory names as if I didn't care. You talked about my enormous eyes, my broad nose, and the fullness of my lips. You even commented about the way I swayed my hips. You assume that if you laugh, I would loathe the uniqueness in me. But your notion is wrong because I am in love with myself, you see. I love my voluptuous lips and my seductive gargantuan brown eyes. I even love the thickness given to my skinny thighs. Till this day, you continue to mock and taunt. But everything I got, you really want. You try to emulate me and do what I do. You look funny because it doesn't even look right on you. You are being injected all over to get what I've got. Girlfriend, either you're born with it or you're not. What was out years ago is now in, no doubt. Everything on you that was in is now way out. Take off my lips, my hips, my hair, and just give it a rest. I'm not trying to be facetious, but she who last best. Ha ha. That's that piece. So that's like based on people, you know how like back in the day, some things weren't popular. Full lips weren't popular. People talked about women with big butts. Now everybody's literally dying to get big boobs and big butts. So it's like, be proud of what you have and who you are, the way you're born. I don't care if you're black, white, green, blue, yellow, be proud of yourself. So that's a poem that I always, like I said, read to my kids to inspire them. And I read it at a lot of Black History events and perform it. So, reading those poems and encouraging myself, inspiring myself, created great confidence and boldness in myself. I got so bold that in high school I sat down and I wrote Illinois Poet Laureate, Chicago State University professor, and a longtime resident, Gwendolyn Brooks, at the time. She has since passed, God rest her soul. I sat down and I wrote her a letter and it included a poem asking for her advice on how to publish, and if she could just critique my poem. But I didn't want her to critique it the way she critiqued it. Oh my goodness. She scribbled so many she found so many errors wrong with it. She even corrected the letter that I sent her. My grammar was so poor in the letter, but it didn't matter to me when I got it because I was just excited that I got her attention. And she actually took the time to wrote me back. It was like a piece of paper, and she had written all over, like everywhere. She ran out of space. And I was like, wow, I made that many errors? So it was writing, she went and turned the paper this way, wrote it. And I was like, wow, but I was fascinated. I'm like, I can't even be offended because she wrote me back. She took time to write me back. So I was excited. I wouldn't let anybody touch it, not even my parents. I have it till this day. It's like laminated, and I don't let anybody touch it, so I keep it and I save it. So her writing me back encouraged me. I took her advice, began to perfect my poetry. I don't believe in saying practice makes perfect. Practice only makes better. And I teach my kids that you practice to make yourself better. But practicing builds your confidence. I can give you an example. Last month, I did an event. It was Black History Month, but Women in Sports event at my employer. And it is fitting for this month as well because it's Women's History Month, March 1st through the 31st. So I practice and practice and practice and practice. And I built my confidence up, so I wasn't like scared or nervous or anything. So I even took speaking classes before I started doing my speeches and things like that. But it didn't really help. Imagining the audience in their underwear, that doesn't help. And I have a funny story about that, so I'll tell you guys that. So before I was to perform and do my speech, I like the word perform. It sounds so much more important, doesn't it? I did a performance, a reading, like so. So I like the word performance because I do perform my poems. But at this event, before I was to get up, my husband leans over. We're sitting down in the audience, and before I'm called up, my 7-year-old is sitting between us. My husband leans over because he thinks he's funny, and he's not. He leans over and goes, "Are you nervous?" I'm like, "No, I'm not nervous." He goes, "Yes, you are, because I see sweat dripping from your armpits." I'm like, "No, you don't. Stop." He goes, "Well, this is what you do. Just imagine the audience in their underwear." And my 7-year-old is there between us. He's just looking straight ahead, not looking at us. We're leaning over him talking. He's just focused on looking straight ahead. He's listening to the conversation. It's like, imagine people in their underwear. I'm like, that doesn't work. And I was like, "You're not funny. Just stop." So Time passed, 7-year-old still sitting there, hasn't said anything. And it is my turn to go up on stage. They're getting ready to call me. So I grab my paperwork and my books, and I'm getting ready to walk up. And the 7-year-old doesn't even look at me. He's still looking straight ahead, but I'm looking at him. He goes, "Mommy." I go, "Yes, dear." And he has this intense look on his face. He goes, "Please don't imagine me in my underwear." So I just started laughing. So any nerves that I did have that came back was shot. So I went up on stage and I didn't imagine anyone in their underwear. And I performed this piece and got great rave reviews. So I'm gonna read it to you guys. Like I said, it was for women in sports, and it's entitled "Her Way." Althea, Wilma, Aura, Surya, Emma, Cynthia, Laura, Layla, Cheryl, Simone, Flojo, Alice, Tessa, Shelly Ann, Merlene, Erlene, Leslie, Naomi, Jackie, Debbie, Rose, Lynette, Enid, Dominique, and last but not least, my beloved sister Ruthie. These are just some of the names of great female legends, international superheroes, accomplished overcomers, and the original GOATs. Yes, the greatest of all times, who paved the way for today's emerging trailblazers next in line. They paved the way for us each in a different way, making history her way. I'll say it again, making his story her way. Representing a wide variety of sports and making an impact in tennis, golf, boxing, track and field, as well as basketball and figure skating. How great of an impact, there's no debating. They pioneered to shatter the barriers and stereotypes that have slowed but continue to grow. They definitely made it easier for us to traverse down this difficult road. There is still necessary change needed, but the legends have lightened the heavy load. We could not have made it this far, even have certain rights, without God and their tremendous sacrifice. Today we thank them for their journey and courage that was far from easy. Although successful, this does not diminish the severe racial gender inequality, social and economic challenges they faced regularly. It's unfortunate that before they shattered expectations, earned awards, and received accolades, they were met with several mental and physical barricades. Oftentimes, they were the target of vicious attacks and hate crimes, but they continued to persevere even during the toughest of times. Although qualified, some said they were not allowed to compete with the other crowd. Accomplished but still having to prove their worth, they stuck with it and put in the extra hard work. They were expected to fall in line, sit back and be undefined. Instead, they rose to the top, becoming the greatest of all times. Not wavering, they continued to fight and stand proud. At times, they quietly endured harsh treatment and gender bias, but their greatness was loud. So loud it shattered the walls of inequality, using this very opportunity to fight for equality. Coming face to face with oppression, racism, sexism, injustice, and hostility ingrained in our societies, assuring the world there was more to their lives than these controversies based on fallacious ideologies. Controversies that threatened to derail their success and greatness, but their success and greatness could not be contained because although outwardly it seemed hopeless and dreadful, internally they believed one day the world would know their names. Proving that double discrimination was no match for these triple threats, the audacious acts of the African American female athletes caused them to win medals and dominate the sports world without regrets. Although they were rejected, often received disapproving looks, and even left out of history books, they went on to nearly destroy the walls of inequality, leaving a nation shook. Now, many take a page from their playbook. Today, many little girls and others around the world are confident they too can change the world. The ball is now in our court to keep their accomplishments in the forefront and continue their legacy. Most importantly, completing the journey they started for us voluntarily, quintessentially. We are obligated to thank them in a very special way for paving the way. Till today, we say thank you in a major way. Because of their strength, their dedication, and sacrifice, many, I pray, can hold their heads up high and proudly say, I did it her way. That was that piece. So that was a poem that I did for a Women's Black History Month event. And like I said, it's fitting for today because it is Women's History Month. So I continue to write and try to perfect my poetry. But perfecting it does not mean that it's perfect. It means that I'm confident in my writing. That's all that means, that I'm confident in presenting my writing to you. So like I said, Ms. Gwendolyn Brooks wrote me back, and it was amazing that she did. But I also understood that I had a lot of work to do. I had to go through each poem that I had already written that I thought was ready for publishing, go through it and rewrite and take her advice and correct my errors, and then I was ready to publish. So after that, I published my first book, and then I published my second book, and then I published my third book. So it does build your confidence when you publish your book and you get rave reviews or accolades and things like that. So I encourage anybody that wants to write or publish, take the advice of someone that has done this before, went down this road, perfect your work, and make sure you are ready to publish. I started doing poetry events. That was another thing I did. I started doing poetry sets, poetry events to also build my confidence in my writing. When you speak to people about your work and you see the response and see that it touches people, that builds confidence as well. So I enjoy reading my poems and hearing later how it touched someone or how someone was able to relate to it. I didn't realize at the time that I was building my own confidence by speaking and helping others. And there was another thing I can tell you about my boldness. I became so bold where I handed a copy of my book to former President Barack Obama, who at the time he was running for U.S. Senate, and I worked on his campaign. And I handed him a copy of my book, and he was so impressed. And we exchanged, actually swapped books. I autographed my copy for him, and he autographed his copy for me. I still have his. I don't know if he still has mine. No caveat. For seriously, he has my book. And I received standing ovations at speaking events. I also became the poet laureate of my church. The pastor named me the poet laureate of my church. And once I started doing all this writing, I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop writing, and that's how I compiled enough poems for 3 books. And now I have enough poems for a fourth and a 5th book. I'm actually working on an autobiography as well. But something tragic happened in my life where I did stop. I stopped writing. On Father's Day 2019, the unimaginable happened. I got a call on Father's Day as we were preparing to celebrate my father to rush to the hospital because something tragic had happened to one of my siblings. So all this time, it takes me about an hour and 45 minutes to get to the hospital because it's further away from where we live. So all this time I'm thinking, okay, something, she just hurt herself, or it's bad, like she's got an injury. Didn't know she was killed. So I get to the hospital and I see her laying in the hospital bed, and it was the worst day of my life. At that moment, I went back to the dark writing, but I also stopped writing. But everything I wrote about was like death and darkness. And why did this happen? And so it took me 3.5 years to actually get back to my positive writing. And like I said, when I talk about the dark writing, it's death, suicide, postpartum deaths, mothers killing their children, gun violence, school shootings, things like that. So it was dark, and I wanted to stray away from that. So I started reading my latest book, A Writer and a Fighter, and got motivated again, listening to music, things like that got me back. And just remembering that writing was my joy, and writing had always helped me in the past through tough circumstances. So my sister my sister that was tragically killed. She was an innocent bystander. Some juveniles stole a rental vehicle and decided that it was a good idea for them to go joyriding, and they were chased by the police, and my sister was in a vehicle. She was a passenger in the vehicle making a left turn, and they T-boned or crashed right into her, killing her instantly. The car jumped up in the air and everything, and it was horrific. So it was like one of the darkest days in my life, and I'm telling you this to encourage you not to let dark moments ruin your writing, ruin anything that you're doing. I actually lifted myself back up by reading poetry again and writing again. So I'm back to writing, working, like I said, I'm working on my 4th and 5th book, seek to publish that. And my sister actually was one of my biggest fans. She accompanied me to poetry events. She would sit at the book signing tables with me. So thinking about her encouraged me also to write. And she was also a great poet, artist, and everything. And so now I'm also going to publish her books, complete her books for her, and publish the books that she left. But I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on you guys. I want to encourage you guys to continue writing. So I'm going to read the poem that I dedicated to her. She'll be very happy and proud that I wrote this poem. I wish she was here, but she would be very happy that I'm talking about her right now. And it's called A Beautiful Soul. We met an angel here on earth. We loved her since birth. Dear Sister Ruthie, you are our little angel. Always have been and always will be. No one can tell us differently. You may not have walked around with a halo of wings, but you were definitely one of the benevolent celestial beings, carrying out godly tasks even without being asked. Displaying many acts of kindness, you were the definition of generosity and selflessness. Treating everyone equally, you understood what true love really meant. Violence, homelessness, and the mistreatment of others are just some of the few things you sought to prevent. You touched so many lives because your entire life was an inspiration. That we can tell. If your heart is broken due to this overwhelming loss, she touched your life as well. Always offering immense unconditional love made it very clear to many you were sent from above. It's so hard to forget you because you gave us so much to remember. You were so many things to so many people whatsoever. As an educator, you schooled us, teaching us a few new things. How ironic this was, seeing we are the older siblings. As a motivator, you inspired and encouraged all. You were humble and very conscious of not making others feel small. As an artist, writer, and designer, you created, uplifted, and inspired so many with your talents. You were genuinely cheerful for others' successes. It was apparent. Keeping true to yourself while spreading truth, you affectionately earned the name Truth Ruth. Like the sun, you shined upon us for a while with that gorgeous, radiant smile. As a peacemaker and role model, you were the champion of the game. Whenever you smiled, everyone did the same. We can't forget about how well you rocked a pair of glasses or a hat with your impeccable style of dress. Not to mention how well you handled pain and stress. If you were hurting, no one knew because you just smiled it through. We were all amazed by your love and strength. No one understands why you came and went. And away so suddenly to a special place. But we would do anything just to see your face. Another day just to hold you tight. Yes, just one more day would make it all right. Because this time around, we would never let you go. How much you are loved, you would definitely know. We thought you were here to stay, not realizing we would have to give you back one day. We were having difficulty accepting the fact that you are gone. We never imagined we would be living without your smile or you here on. This is surely unreal, but God will definitely heal the pain and heartache we all feel. Somehow we will find a way to smile through the tears because of the pleasant memories of you left over the years. We try not to look of it as you passing away, but passing through while spreading lots of love and cheer. We were not just, you were not just our baby sis, you were a hero and friend, my dear. So that was the poem I read, dedicated to my sister, and I read to her. It's going to be published in my fourth book.
About 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So does any of you guys have questions? I'm out of time. Do you guys have any questions for me or anything? You have a question? I'm sorry, I can.
Let's clap, yeah.
Oh. Thank you. Anybody else has questions or anything?
Paul, I'm curious how the writing of the autobiography is going, given you've been working with poetry for so long, switching the medium. How's that going?
It's difficult. It is so difficult because I didn't know where to start. So I just started from the beginning and just started writing, and it's going pretty good, but I'm not so sure where it's going to lead. So yeah, it's tough because poetry is just simple. It's short and simple. So writing is more in detail. I have to give out more information. Things like that. So yeah, good. Yeah. Thank you guys. You've been great. Great.
Awesome. Thanks again, Paula. All right, let's bring our 2 staff poets officially back out. If you can hear me, Mrs. Wiggins, Miss Torrance. Yep. All right, so we have a science teacher, and we have a librarian. I'm curious. Your hands are full, so maybe you'll have to do this instead of with fingers, with your voice. On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being insane. How difficult was this? What would you say?
Really? I mean, you'll see the quality might not be great, but I felt like it was nerve-wracking, but I feel like all in all, like a 4 or 5. Like it kind of just worked out.
All right.
I think, not awesome maybe, but it worked out.
Okay.
I came in with some ideas and then I changed. I also wanted to write, and so I was writing in the darkness with my phone as a flashlight holding over it. So
That's poetic right there, yeah.
To do that as well, which added a little bit of stress, but yeah, we'll see what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Who do you guys want to hear from first? They can't shut up. They, like the whole period, they were just talking. It's amazing. Rock, paper, scissors. Can you do that?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do rock, paper, scissors.
Best 2 or 3 or 1? Let's just go 1. Let's just go 1. First person goes. Winner goes. Winner goes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, hit. Okay. Ooh. I go first, right? All right. Do I stand at the microphone? I don't know. For what it's worth, I'm just going to throw this out here in advance. I decided, I don't know why, to challenge myself and do the words in order as they appeared without altering any text or tense. But they were in a different order than that. This is the order I got them on. Whatever. Anyway, here's what I came up with. They assembled freely, here on their own merit. Who was their teacher? Not a key detail. As they sat, still, attentive, it's possible their minds would roam through their internal, leaving the messages unheard. Might they pause, absorb some rugged message concerning a delicate flower? Might they gain a new perceptive insight into whichever nugget of thought might spurn some light onto the darkened, precious balance that they long sought and might, with ample hope, today find? It was about you guys and this. There we go.
That was excellent. I knew when I saw that I was going against Ms. Torrance. She is one of the most creative people in this school, so I knew this was going to be a challenge for me. There's no doubt about that. So my poem is called, Is It Friday Yet? Sometimes I find myself running through life, eagerly waiting for the next day, especially hoping for each rugged moment to pass quickly, to get to Friday. I don't take enough time to pause, to see the merit in each experience, in each day, in each hour, in each second. Then, After each fast-paced day, at night in the still darkness, I allow my mind to roam, to freely relive the day's events, to spurn the negative and hold on to the positive like a rock climber holding on to a frazzled rope, and to realize that the key to a life well lived is finding balance. Easier said than done. Yet as I get older, I am more perceptive. I better understand the importance of practicing gratitude, of appreciating every moment, of taking risks, of pushing through, of doing the uncommon, the unheard of taking a stand, and of making whichever decision helps others and brings me joy. Like a flower that only has the summer season before the frost of fall, I want to live for the Mondays, the Tuesdays, the Wednesdays, the Thursdays, and not just those Fridays. So it's now time to change my outlook. Is it Monday yet?
All right, for the record, last year Mrs. Wiggins did this and she said, it can't be 20 words, it has to be 15. I would never get 20, and clearly next year if you do this again, I'm giving you 20 words. Okay, so Paula, if you're back there and you want to come back out, we've got some time for questions still. If you poets want to take the fancy chairs, I can bring you the microphone, yeah. My first question, and then we'll turn it over to you guys, is I'm always curious which word gave you the most trouble?
I would say for me, because I was trying to keep the tense and where I was at in my thing, I struggled with perceptive. Like, give a perceptive thought, a perceptive, I can't remember what I had before this, but then it was the one time that I went to Google and I was like, I typed in perceptive insight. Or no, that's what I landed on. Perceptive something, and I was like, that's just weird. And insight came up. I was like, oh, I'll take it. So I did that. I used Google at one point. I also, for what it's worth, had a little extra time, and I ran a ChatGPT just to see if the AI could best us. And I don't think it did. It was fast, but it didn't best us.
As a librarian, I love Google and I support that, yes. I would say for me, probably the hardest word was whichever, which seems like a common word and would be easy to put in there, but I was trying to find that contrast and I couldn't quite figure out where I was going to put that. And so that was the one that I was having trouble. Some of the other words I could try to grasp onto an image or something that I wanted to connect with my theme, but I was having a difficulty where I would put whichever in my poem.
Awesome. We got 2 minutes left, so if you have questions for any of the three concerning writing, just raise your hand, shout it out. Okay, then Paul, I'm coming back to you because I did have a second question.
I got a question, Matt.
Go for it, Doug.
All right. So, Paula, I thought it was really interesting. Like, as a teacher, we're always concerned about grading and giving feedback, and sometimes kids write things and they get a lot of feedback, and it's kind of discouraging. I thought it was fascinating. You said that when Maya Angelou wrote back to you, and she had all this feedback, correcting all your mistakes. It was inspirational for you instead of, deflating. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, it was encouraging for me, the feedback, because I tried to be open to it, knowing that I'm the amateur, they're the professional. And so the teacher who critiqued my work, I think he only had a couple of things to say, but he was very positive, and it made a very great impact on my life. And Gwendolyn Brooks, it kind of hurt my heart a little bit because she was like my favorite. The teacher, I didn't really know much about him, just being in class. But Gwendolyn Brooks, that was, it hurt me just a little bit, but I'm thankful that she wrote what she did, and it inspired me. It just touched my heart. And like I was getting at with teachers play a very important role in kids' lives and students, so they matter. So that teacher, I didn't expect to have such a great love for him after reading that, and the impact that it had on my life, and encouraging me to do more things in other classes as well. So teachers, you matter. You guys have a great role in kids' lives. And I hope that the students, you realize that too, that they're here to help you, not to discourage you. They're here to help you succeed. That most teachers want you to succeed in life. So I hope you guys understand that. I hope that answers your question. Sometimes I digress.
It was my question as well, so. Great rhyme. Thanks everyone for coming to Bell's About Room. Just so you know, tomorrow we have young adult, novelist, fantasy writer, and LHS alum